The next muscle group is going to be called the abdominal group. So the abdominal muscles are essentially a number of muscles layered on top of one another, and the one that we really need to pay attention to is this one right here. So this big abdominal muscle right there. We don't need to worry about the name, we're just going to call them abs because that's basically what it is. So like I've mentioned, the abdominal group is normally this part here, which is kind of like the lowest of them all, the one that the deepest, so this is a deep muscle, and then you'll have a bunch of superficial muscle on top of that, but those layers of muscle are generally really thin, and they don't quite grow as much as this one when you work them out. So the ones that are always going to poke through are going to be these ones right here. Now there's a couple things that are interesting about this is, as you can see here, you always have the potential to have a 10 pack. So there's 10 in total. The only thing is that the lower two here, the bottom two sections of this muscle those are going to be blended together in most cases. It's very rare that there's a clear separation here, but so yeah, most of the time you'll see an 8-pack, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and yeah, so they are split down the center, and where they attach is going to be at the lower portion of the pelvic area right here, so at the hip bone in the very center and in the front. And also they're going to attach at the top here in front of the thoracic cage, but not quite onto the bones directly. So instead they're going to attach onto the cartilage of the ribs. So the portion here, you can see here there's a little separation. This portion here that attaches onto the sternum, this is just cartilage, so it's not actual bone. The abdominal muscles are going to attach to that. So they're going to attach onto the 5th, 6th, and 7th cartilage portion of those ribs. So this 5th rib, 6th rib, and 7th rib. And so if we can look at this from this side here, you can see kind of where it attaches. And it's also going to attach partially onto the sternum, so the lower portion of the sternum right here. Now, these two muscles are going to be most of the time pretty much unobstructed, so there's not going to be any kind of muscle that lay on top of it other than the small other layers of the abdominal groups. But you know, they're always going to be pretty much visible, except maybe at the top here where the pectoralis major kind of overlaps in some cases, so not always, but if anything, it's going to be more of a blend between the two rather than an overlap. So you'll have kind of like the top section of the muscle here blend into the lower section of the pectoralis major, and this is going to be especially visible when the arm is raised and when that muscle is stretched. All right, so when it comes to drawing the abdominal group, there's a lot of mistake that is often made, and it's actually a very simple muscle group to draw. So the simplest way to imagine it is going to be a kind of like a really long bullet, so something like that, right? So that's going to be the overall shape. It connects here onto right below the pectoralis major, and it's actually maybe slanted a little bit more like this, but there you go, and then it'll be split down the center like we've seen before, and it'll be split in 10 different parts. So 5 on each. So you'll have right about in the center here the first mark, so you can split that in half right there, and then you'll have another section below, and this one here is going to be blended, and then you'll have 3 sections on top. And then as you go towards the pectoralis major, these sections are actually going to start to point up, so they're pointing towards where they're going, and that'll be even more apparent at the top right here. So as you can see, now we have all the sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if we were to see this in perspective, well, it will be just like a really flat box. So it's actually pretty simple, and split in half here, belly button, other separation, then starts pointing up even more, split down the center, and just add a little bit of thickness, like if it's just a flat box, right? So super simple. So then when it comes to deforming this thing, it's going to, well, this is going to be placed here joining the torso and the pelvic area. And whenever the torso rotates, well, this is going to rotate along with it. So let's start to draw it here on the front view, just like that, onto the hip bone, at the very base of the hip bone. And then from there, well, we can split this up like we've just mentioned. So belly button right about here, right down the center. And then you have one section starts to point up, and then the other section points up even more. And here we have a separation. And sometimes we'll see this, sometimes not. So sometimes this whole thing here is going to be one ab. And sometimes in rare cases, you'll be able to see kind of the separation here. But yeah, this is mostly what this muscle group is going to look like. And so we can fill this up with color. All right, so this shape here is always moving as one. So, you know, for example, if the torso was bent, you know, was bent sideways like this, and you have the spine, basically the abs always follow the spine. So you have kind of maybe like the pelvic box here. So in this case, you know, this the abdominal group would follow that curve just like that. So it would deform along with it as one. And then of course we can add back all the different subdivisions, but it would be the same idea. But there you go. So that's how it deforms. And then when it stretches, it's the same thing. So when it stretches, those muscles here are going to become thinner. Or another example, if the person bends forward instead, right? So something like this, then you have the pelvic box. So the spine would be something like this instead now. So what happens then? Well, it's the same idea. So we still start from the same spot here, and we follow the curve of the spine. It goes in, we follow it, and then it'll come and attach itself at the base here. So same idea, but of course, there's going to be a really, really intense bend happening here. And when as we've seen here, the muscles, when they stretch, they become thinner. In this case, when they stretch, they'll contract. So instead of being maybe this thin, they'll be this wide instead, right? So instead of being this way, they'll contract and they'll be wider than they are long. So instead of stretching, all the different abs would instead, compress each individually, so they become wider and they can just kind of roll on top of each other. So in here, all the subdivisions is still there. So regardless, even if the abdominal group as a whole is not as long anymore because it's compressed, you still need to divide it properly, and then this will give you the indication of where to make those individual abdominal muscles kind of bulge. And so if we draw the same thing here onto the one in perspective, it's going to be the same process. So we start here, we start wide and draw that bullet shape, and then we follow the curve of the rib cage, right? So we have this nice curve right here. So we're going to follow this curve, and then it digs in a little bit because there's nothing here, right? It's empty, and then out again slightly to attach onto the front of the pelvis right here. So I'm going to follow that line, draw a parallel line to that one, and then attach back and connect. So there you go. So now I can fill this in. All right, so now what it's left to do is just add the separation in the center, following those outside curves. And now we just need to draw the separation. So again, from the center, not quite the center. This one is always a little bit lower, as you can see here. So we have this, the full length. This one is not in the center, it's just slightly lower. So we're gonna trace that first separation here because this indicates the belly button. So not quite the center of the abdominal group, but just slightly below. And then all that's left, to really be able to draw the volume for these individual abdominal muscles is to just round out the edges like this. So you round out the edges, round out, and this should give you a much better base to begin adding shading onto this if needed. So there you go. I mean, it's a pretty simple muscle to draw. At its core, it's just a very simple shape. It's just and you can only see it from the front, and it's flat and it follows kind of the curve of the body. So, when deforming it, this is probably one of the easiest one to draw, just because everything kind of directs how you're going to draw it, right? You don't really need to think about much. You just look at the direction of the torso and then draw your abdominal group following that same angle, following that same line. When it contracts, they just get a little bit bulkier. But yeah, pretty straightforward. In the next chapter, we're going to take a look at the obliques. See you in a bit.